Welcome back, I'm Paul, and today we have the Lot-0 barrel empty, so we're ready to start something in there, and I really don't have anything that is ready to go into the Lot-0, but I do have these two large rocks. This is a rock that a friend had asked me if I could polish, and I've ran it through the coarse grit on my 12-pound barrel, and it's kind of been sitting around, and I did a couple other big ones that I did in the 3-pound barrel. I did all the stages in the 3-pound barrel, and right now they're all busy, and this one's been sitting around for a while, and I found that it will stuff into the Lot-0 tumbler, so we're going to throw that one in there. And then I've got this large piece of petrified wood, and it ran in our coarse barrel, or coarse grit in our 12-pound barrel for a long time, and we finally got it pretty smoothed off. There's some voids in it, which is pretty common in petrified wood from what I've seen at least. It's really agatized, so I think it could look cool all polished up. This one, I'll get it wet. That's what this one looks like wet. It's nothing too exciting, but we'll see what it looks like polished, or if it polishes. It's a little bit coarser feeling, so I'm not sure it's going to polish. And the petrified wood doesn't really change too much, but you can really see the veins and the wood grain in it and all that stuff, so I really like that piece. So we're going to go ahead and throw those two pieces in. Like I say, this one barely fits. Hopefully it's not too big of a pain in the butt loading it in and out when we're going through the stages. That one fits pretty easy. We'll put some water in there. And I don't know how those are going to turn out, so I've got this stuff that is ready to go to the next stage. It's pretty well just some red jasper. There's a piece of crazy lace, and then there's some sea maggots in there that we got sent to us from a viewer. And those things have all ran through coarse grit, and they're ready to go to the next stage. And that's really all I have sitting around right now, but I'm going to throw them in as filler. And then the rest we'll do ceramic media. So that's all the rocks we have. It's about, not quite half full I'd say, but those two big rocks, I don't know how well it'll roll. And I may end up having to get out some more ceramic media, because that's all the stuff I have that I've been using right now, but I've got some new stuff. And you don't want to put new stuff into a polish stage, so it'll be good for me to get some of the new stuff into a medium grit. That's as rough as I run my ceramic media, because the new stuff has sharp edges, so it's good to get that rounded off. So we'll go ahead and get the water dumped out, and we'll get moved over on the tumbler and get our new ceramic media in there to fill the rest of the barrel and get the grit in and get it rolling. All right, I threw some new media in there. I don't want to go too full because I don't know how it's going to roll, but if it looks like it's a little low after we get it rolling, I'll add some more. Everything's wet except for that new media on top, which will be fine. I'll give it a few squirts with the water bottle. We'll get it going, and I'm going to do a tablespoon of medium grit. And we'll go for a day and a half, and then I'll dump it and rinse it. And we'll do that twice before we move on to the 500 aluminum oxide. Alright, we're all done with the medium grit on this batch with the two large rocks. And I already dumped it and washed it, and then I put it all back in the barrel with some borax, and I do a little wash cycle. So we'll take a look at it, and we'll get going to the next stage. This big one that's in there barely fits in the barrel, so I didn't take it out after the last grit because I was just going to do a wash cycle. So I might try to pull it out here. right, came out. It's feeling a little bit better. I'm not positive that this is going to take a shine, but it's definitely feeling better now after medium grit. Alright, so there's not much in this batch other than the 2 big rocks. That big greenish one that I don't know what it is, and the big piece of petrified wood. And then there's some red jasper and stuff. But I'll go ahead and get everything cleaned up a little better, and we'll get set back up on the tumbler, and we'll get going on the 500 grit. Alright, everything's washed up real well. Back in the barrel, everything's wet. We're going to get going on 500 grit aluminum oxide. And we'll do half a teaspoon of the aluminum oxide polish, a tablespoon of borax, and we'll go for 3 days. So I normally don't show this all the time, but this is what it looks like after running 3 days on the 500 aluminum oxide. And at this point, I'll always add some dish soap and then a little bit of extra water, and that'll help clean the slurry off before I do my little wash cycle with the borax. So I'll plug it back in, we'll get it rolling again, and I'll show you the amount of dish soap and water that I normally add. And then I'll run it for probably a half an hour or something like that, and it just helps clean the slurry off the rocks. It comes off a little faster. Right there, it slows the rolling action down, and then you know you've got enough water. Too much water and it won't roll at all. So we'll let them go for like a half an hour, and then we'll take them out and dump them and rinse them off. Alright, that's what they look like after they ran with dish soap and extra water for about a half an hour. So you can see the slurry isn't on the rocks near as thick, and it usually helps with rinsing them off a little quicker. Maybe I'll rinse it off a little bit before we try to get that one out. Or maybe we'll just leave it in until after we run the borax on it too. Alright, I think we're just going to leave the big rock in. That's kind of what I've been doing. It's nice and cleaned off in there. And we're just going to run a wash cycle on it anyways. We're not adding new grit to it yet. There's not much else in this batch. Just the big petrified wood and that other big rock. But everything looks really good. So we'll go ahead and load this all back into the barrel. Petrified wood's looking really nice. It's like agatized. Feels really good. All right, I'll just dump the water out so everything's wet, no standing water, and we'll put them back on the tumbler for, I usually do an hour or two with the borax in it, just to clean them up good and clean the barrel before we move on to the next stage. All right, they ran for about 2 hours in the borax, and now we're ready to give them a good wash, and we'll get them moving on to the next stage. See if we can get this big one out. There we are. Yeah, it's looking really nice. It feels a lot smoother than it did when we started. I didn't have a lot of faith that it was actually going to polish, and it still might not, but it's feeling better. So I'll go ahead and clean everything real well and clean the barrel, and we'll get set back up on the tumbler here, and we'll get going on 1,000 grit aluminum oxide. Everything's all cleaned up and back in the barrel. It's all wet, no standing water. We'll do a tablespoon of borax and a half a teaspoon of the 1,000 grit aluminum oxide, and we'll go for another 3 days. We finished up 3 days in the 1,000 grit aluminum oxide, and I already added the dish soap and some extra water to clean the slurry off the rocks, and dumped them and rinsed them and put them back in for a little wash cycle with the borax. Now we'll rinse them all off and see how they're looking and get them going on to polish. See if we can get that big one to come out of there. Oh yeah, there we go. Everything looks about the same while it's wet, but I might pull a couple of them out and I'll let them dry. I'll clean them a little bit better and get them back in the barrel, and then we will get over to the tumbler and get them going on polish. All right, everything's washed up and wet with no standing water. I pulled a couple pieces out here to see how they looked after 1,000 grit. And this red jasper, it already looks really nice. I mean, it looks pretty well polished without even doing the polish stage yet, just the 1,000 aluminum oxide. And then this is a piece of desert jasper, and it also looks really nice. And then I did pull our big rock out, and I wasn't sure if it was going to take a polish, but it actually looks pretty decent. If you get it at the right angle, you can see that it's a bit more, I don't know if the coarse would be the word, but it's not as finely grained as some of the jaspers and agates, but it's taken a polish. So I think that it should look pretty good when we get out of the polish stage. So we'll get that back in there, and we are ready to get it going again. We'll do another 3-day run. It'll be a tablespoon of borax and a half a teaspoon of the aluminum oxide polish, and they will be done. Alright, these rocks finished up 3 days in polish, and then I added the extra water and some dish soap to help clean the slurry off. And I washed them all off and put them back in with some borax to run a little wash cycle. And now that's been going for a few hours, so we're ready to take a look at it. Kind of a pain in the butt with that big rock in there. Well, everything looks real good and feels real good. I'm going to go ahead and wash through everything, make sure I try to get all the polish out of the nooks and crannies, and we'll pick them onto the ceramic and let them dry up and take a look, see how they turned out. Alright, I got them all picked out of the ceramic and they all dried, so everything's good and dry. It dried overnight. And I'm pretty happy with how things turned out. A couple of them that I didn't think were going to shine very well turned out okay. So we'll go ahead and get the camera moved over here and we'll take a closer look at some of them. So there was, I think it was a seam plume agate, I believe it was called, from a subscriber sent me some stuff. And it's got some cracks and stuff in it, but I tumbled it for quite a long time so you can see the agate that's in the inside of it. You can see some of the bands every here and there, but there's not a ton. But it did shine up. They had a hole in it there, and there's some other material on it that didn't shine very well, but it was alright. And then we had some red jasper, and it all shined up about the same. It all looks real nice. This was basically just filler for the two large rocks that I wanted to tumble. I had one piece of Mexican crazy lace, and that turned out pretty good. It has a big hole in the back there that I'm not going to be able to get rid of, so I just basically had to live with it, but the rest of it looks really nice. And there's a couple pieces of desert jasper or polychrome jasper, and they all look real good, have a nice shine. But the main ones of this batch were these two large rocks. We'll look at the petrified wood first. And a lot of petrified wood that I've had and seen has a lot of cracks in it and stuff. So there are some cracks and flaws and things like that that you grind and grind and grind on it and core straight, and you're just going to expose more. You're never going to get rid of them. But it turned out pretty nice. I like this piece. Ever since I saw this piece, a lot of it I cut up. But this one I was like, nope, I'm not cutting that one. I'm just going to tumble it as it is. And it turned out pretty good. It's a pretty large piece, really. So I had the two large rocks in this batch, and I wasn't sure how it would work out having those two in there, if it would roll very well or what it would do, but it worked out just fine. And this one isn't as big as the other one. This is the other one that we did. And you can kind of see, I don't know how well you can see that in the camera, that I think it's the how kind of porous the rock is, and like the microcrystalline quartz, which is like agate and jasper and stuff, the crystals are so small that you need a microscope to see them. And I believe that this rock just has a little bit larger crystals, so you can almost see the gaps in between the crystals. And that's why it doesn't quite shine as nice as some of the other things, but it did take a good shine. It shined better than I thought it was. There you can really see the gaps between the crystals, kind of. I believe that that's what it is, but I'm no expert on it by any means. And if anybody ever had any other thoughts, don't be afraid to chime in. But you can just, it shined nice, but it just has voids in it where it doesn't look like glass like some other things. And don't get me wrong, it does look really nice. It turned out a lot better than I thought it would. And I've got this little flaw right there, but it's kind of dented in, and then this one over here too that has that big hole in it. But I wasn't going to work on getting rid of those because the rest of it looked pretty nice, and it's not very exciting. Not a lot of color in it or anything, or bands or any cool designs. It was just something that somebody asked me if I could tumble it, and I told them, yeah, we can give it a try and we'll see what it turns into. And it shined up pretty nice. I think they'll be happy with it. So that's all we really had this batch. It wasn't anything too exciting. It was just a quick run to see how the larger rocks in the tumbler turned out. And they tumbled fine for the whole process, and everything turned out real nice. So that's all we got for today. Thanks for watching.